Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's your Deep Lynx, coming at you with another deep dive into the wacky world of video games and the ridiculous ways they get twisted by so-called woke culture. Today, we're going to talk about a game that somehow took a straightforward, badass Nazi-killing storyline and managed to turn it into a giant soapbox for political correctness and social justice. Yeah, you guessed it. We're talking about Wolfenstein, the new Colossus. So, buckle up, smash that like button, and let's get into the meat of this mess. The story recap. What went wrong? Alright, so let's start with a quick recap. Wolfenstein, the new Colossus is supposed to be the sequel to The New Order, a game where you get to play as B.J. Blazkowicz, a hardened resistance fighter battling against the Nazi-occupied America in an alternate 1961. So far, so good, right? Who doesn't love a story about kicking Nazi ass? But here's where the woke agenda starts seeping in like mold in an old basement. The game's narrative takes this dark and brutal world and decides it needs to be modernized with some forced diversity, social justice lessons, and every damn talking point that makes Twitter activists salivate. Grace Walker, the black feminist single mom as a leader. Let's start with the queen of cringe herself, Grace Walker. Now, Grace is an African-American woman, a single mom, and a former Black Panther-type activist who magically becomes the de facto leader of the resistance after BJ and his crew save her ass. What does she do to earn this position? Absolutely nothing. She's immediately treated like she's the smartest, most badass leader around because, well, diversity, I guess? I mean, they couldn't have gone with someone who's actually been fighting Nazis for decades like BJ, or, you know, any of the other seasoned resistance members. Nope, the woke gods demanded a strong, black feminist leader, and Grace is here to fill that checkbox. It's like the writers were sitting around saying, how do we make sure everyone knows this is a woke game? And someone raised their hand and said, I know. Let's introduce a character whose only qualification for leadership is that she ticks all the diversity boxes. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for diversity when it's done right. But here, it just feels like Grace is parachuted in to look diverse without actually contributing anything of substance to the story. She just shows up, throws a few insults, bullies the men around her, and suddenly, she's the leader. What the fuck? Resistance fighters acting like teenagers. But Grace is just the tip of the iceberg, my friends. Let's talk about how the American resistance fighters are portrayed in this game. Instead of acting like hardened soldiers who've been fighting a brutal war for years, they're depicted like a bunch of hormonal teenagers at summer camp. I mean, who the hell wrote these characters? They're joking around, pranking each other, and having petty arguments while supposedly trying to overthrow a goddamn Nazi regime. Are you kidding me? You're facing one of the most oppressive forces in human history, and this is how you behave? Where's the grit, the determination, the toughness that should come with being in a resistance movement? Instead, we get a bunch of bickering children who look like they'd rather be swiping on Tinder than, you know, fighting for freedom. This juvenile portrayal totally kills the serious, oppressive atmosphere that Wolfenstein is supposed to have. It's like they're trying to turn a grim fight against fascism into an episode of Degrassi. They could have had so much more gravitas, so much more intensity, but instead, we get a bunch of characters who don't feel like they're in a war. They feel like they're in a goddamn high school drama club. Grace Walker's cringe behavior. And let's get back to our fearless leader, Grace, for a second. Her entire leadership style seems to consist of bullying the men around her, acting like she's the only one who knows what's up, and throwing around insults like she's in some kind of woke roast battle. I mean, how many times does she need to belittle someone to prove she's the boss? She comes across as this over-the-top caricature of the strong, independent woman stereotype, but without any of the nuance or depth that could make her an interesting character. She just bulldozes through every scene, making every guy around her look like an incompetent idiot. It's like they wanted to cram every girl boss trope into one character, but forgot to make her actually likable or compelling. I get it. They're trying to push a message, but man, it's so forced it's almost painful to watch. Every time she opens her mouth, it feels like the game is screaming, look how woke we are. And it just doesn't work. Instead of being inspiring or badass, Grace comes off as a cringe-inducing stereotype that feels like she was plucked straight out of some activist's wet dream. The white versus black morality play. And oh boy, let's not forget about the morality play they're running here. This game goes full on with the idea that almost every white person is bad and every black person is good. You know, like a typical woke social justice warrior story. All the Nazi villains, sadistic and irredeemably evil, are portrayed as white, while the noble resistance fighters and moral characters are mostly black or from other minority groups. Now, look, I'm all for diverse stories, but come on, this is just lazy writing. It's like they're scared of showing any kind of moral complexity, any gray areas, because that might get in the way of their preachy narrative. They just paint everything in the broadest strokes possible. White equals bad, black equals good. It's like a woke fairy tale where they didn't even try to give any nuance or depth to these characters. This isn't just bad storytelling, it's insulting to the intelligence of the players. People aren't this black and white, pun totally intended. We all know that humanity is a mixed bag, full of complexities, contradictions, and gray areas. But instead of exploring that, the game just serves us a big old plate of woke propaganda, simplified down to kindergarten levels. Blazkowicz's childhood flashback, beaten for wanting to wear a dress. Now, here's where the game really goes off the rails. We've got a flashback to B.J. Blazkowicz's childhood, where we see his father beating the crap out of him for, wait for it, wanting to wear a dress. Yeah, you heard me right. They decided to add this whole subplot where BJ as a kid wants to wear a dress, and his father reacts violently. First off, why the hell is this even in the game? Was there some secret poll where everyone asked for Wolfenstein to be about children exploring their gender identity? This is a game where you're supposed to be fighting Nazis, not getting a lecture on toxic masculinity and LGBT issues. But no, they decided we needed a scene where BJ's father is portrayed as the epitome of toxic masculinity because, God forbid, little BJ wanted to play dress up. This is just LGBT propaganda 101, even about children. It's like the writers thought, hey, how do we make this character even more sympathetic in today's political climate? I know. Let's show him wanting to wear a dress and getting beat up for it. It's such an obvious ploy to check yet another woke box that it just feels completely out of place and unnecessary. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against games having deep, emotional moments or tackling difficult subjects. But this scene just feels like it's trying way too hard to push an agenda. It's so on the nose, so in your face, that it feels like you're being lectured to rather than being allowed to experience a story. And oh, the icing on the cake? They frame BJ's dad as this embodiment of every toxic masculine value you can think of: discipline, toughness, authority, all portrayed as inherently evil or abusive. The message is clear: traditional masculine values? They're just toxic behavior. It's like they're trying to shame any guy who doesn't fit into their new age, progressive mold. Give me a break. Conclusion: a game derailed by wokeness. So, was Wolfenstein, the new Colossus, ruined by woke culture? Hell yes, it was. The game could have been an amazing continuation of BJ's story, filled with badass moments and hardcore resistance action. Instead, it gets bogged down with forced diversity, political pandering, and virtue signaling that feels out of place in a game about fighting Nazis. If you love the older Wolfenstein games for their fast-paced action and unapologetic Nazi-killing fun, then brace yourself for this one. Because instead of just giving you that, they've decided to turn it into a lecture hall for all things woke, from diversity to LGBT issues and beyond. And, look, I get it, some people might love this direction. They might see it as progressive or forward-thinking. But for many of us, it just feels like another example of a game getting hijacked by social justice warriors who care more about sending a message than telling a great story. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in to another deep dive with Deep Lynx. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Did the new Colossus get ruined by all this woke nonsense, or am I just being a grumpy old gamer? Smash that like button if you enjoyed the rant, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to ring that bell so you don't miss any of my future videos. Stay sharp, keep gaming, and I'll catch you all next time.